Today we talk about threshold testing. Hello legends and super legends, welcome to Veloharmony. In today's video I want to discuss the significance of threshold testing and the difficulties involved in getting a good test result. Why do we do threshold testing? If all you do is go out there and just ride, yeah, over time you will get in somewhat decent shape, but you won't control when it happens or how quickly you get there. That's why you need structure. So in any structured program, you need to do your testing first to see where you are, to derive your zones. Whether you're training to a power meter or heart rate monitor, notwithstanding, you need to know your zones. I always throw in RPE, and the reason I do that is threshold testing is so difficult because if you don't keep the pressure on the pedals, as soon as you let up, the heart rate stops coming up. Heart rate has a lag. You start to go hard. Let's say I'm going 3 out of 5. The heart rate probably is still at 1 out of 5. It will take a few minutes for that heart rate to represent the zone I've been in for 2 minutes. Same thing with the power meter. You start to go hard, the power meter will jump to whatever watts you have. But if you back off for an intersection or you coast, the power meter numbers drop. Those of you who own a power meter, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't set it to where you're averaging, say 6 seconds or 10 seconds, they have various settings that you pick. If you just pick what I call the live power numbers, your power numbers are all over the graph. They're just crazy. You know, they make no sense. You got to smooth them out. That's why. So even with power meters, you have to know what you're doing. But regardless of what tool you're using, you still need to know your zones for your body, for you and your level of fitness, because they will vary and they will change. If you train and you consistently and you get in shape, your zones will change and you got to retest so you can know that you're training effectively, so that you're not just riding around hoping to get in shape. At some point in time, you can dial in and maximize your precious hours that you invested in cycling. That's the difference. Those are what people refer to as marginal gains. There are people out there that ride 20 hours a week, and there are people that ride 10 hours a week and achieve the same results as the person doing 20 hours a week. If the person who's doing 20 hours a week is not focused and doesn't have a structured plan. So you need that. So when people sign on for our coaching, the first thing I do is get a threshold test. In fact, if they say they've had a layoff, I don't test them right away. I just give them base endurance work to do for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we begin the testing. Once the testing is done, then we get the zones. But you have to do the work. The coach can't ride the bike for you. You must do it. You have to get out there and ride. So the challenges of doing these tests are such that, first of all, you got to make sure you're well rested. They're not a whole lot of fun. It's hard. These tests are hard, okay? Our test that I have, I'll put the link here for that. We basically have a 30-minute test, but we record 20 minutes of it. And the warm-up that's recommended before you even begin that 30-minute period is like a 20-minute warm-up. And I have specific methods on how to warm up that will help guide people to get them ready to go hard. You know, we have that on the website that basically guides you through everything. And the reason why that's important is if you come to do the test and you're not warmed up and ready to go hard, kind of like going to a time trial, you're not ready to go hard, your numbers will be skewed. Plus, you have several challenges. If you do it on an indoor trainer, there's a tendency in general, studies have proven that riders seem to go harder on the road than they do on an indoor trainer. Don't really know why. I don't know if it's psychological or what. But the indoor trainer gives you better control. You don't have to deal with intersections and other interruptions. Now, doesn't mean you can't go out on the road and find a course that doesn't have a lot of intersections to where you will be able to put pressure on the pedals the whole time. The significance of that doesn't matter whether you're using heart rate monitor or power meter. As soon as you coast, heart rate starts to go down because it's still trying to catch up. Even if it's there, if you're in decent shape, when you back off, the heart rate drops. So then your average is skewed because that's what we need is your average. So our test, the first 10 minutes is to get you going, and then we record the last 20 minutes of the test. That's what we record to get your numbers. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to make sure you're riding as hard as you can for 20 minutes. It's not a sightseeing effort. You're riding hard. You want to ride as fast as you can go without blowing for that test. And that's hard. Whether you're doing the FTP test or the functional threshold heart rate test, it's the same. So the challenge is a lot of riders have challenges pushing themselves for that long. I mean, really, ideally, the test should be an hour, but that's why we make it 30 minutes, because it's just hard to go hard that long unless you're in an event or something. You could always use an event to do the testing as well, but you need to do the test. Without that test, you don't have quality derivation of your zone numbers so that you know that you're maximizing your training time. What's the significance? If you have bad zone numbers, when you think you're going easy, you might be going hard. When you think you're going hard, you might not be going hard enough. You need to know where you are, because on a day where the wind's behind you, yeah, you can be going fast, but it doesn't mean you're going hard or hard enough. You have to have focused workouts for each time you go out. That's how come the top riders can ride frequently and still be rested when their big events come, because they have certain days where they stay in what I call the recovery zones or the endurance zones and so forth. So I will summarize by saying that if you want to improve, you need to either focus on making sure you have a good perception of your RPE, meaning rate of perceived exertion. I use that a lot. I don't depend on heart rate. I know when I'm going 50% or 75% or whatever. You need to know that, because that works in conjunction with heart rate or even power meter. How does that do that? Those of you who own power meters that are really religiously sold to them, here's why. You go out on a day knowing that you can do 200 watts all the time, right? And yeah, you're putting out 200 watts, but that 200 watts feel like you're putting out 800. That's where RPE comes in, because you need to recognize that I know I can do 200 watts, but is it supposed to feel this hard? So power meter alone is not enough. They work with other things. That's why riders that have power meters at the top levels still use heart rate, because they want to know at this power of 250 watts, maybe last month my heart rate was 130. And now this month, it's 150 at the same 200. That lets them know something's going on with the body, that they might need to back off. Because if you're not improving, improvement means at a given wattage, your heart is using less effort to pump the nutrients to your muscles. I talk about that in some of the group ride narration, is that the heart is not the only barometer, if you're using a heart rate monitor, that you need to go by, because what happens is this. As the heart gets stronger, it's a muscle. It enlarges. If you train long enough and train properly, your heart gets bigger. It has better stroke volume. So it takes less beats per minute to do its job. Its job is, you're working, I'm going to give you the nutrients the muscles need. So for example, as you get fitter, your heart now will say, I don't need to beat at 150 beats per minute at this effort. I need to only do 120 for you to do that same effort, whatever zone it may be. So you can't say, oh, well, the heart is pumping at 120 now, and that means that I need to go even harder. No, your legs also are doing something. It's a different muscle group. If your legs are saying it's in zone 4, meaning the effort they're putting out, then it doesn't matter that your heart is 120 beats per minute. And these are just examples arbitrarily I'm coming up with to explain. Your heart might be low, but your legs are dying. Then that tells you that your leg muscles did not get the recovery they needed, because you're not able to drive your heart rate higher. You see how complicated this gets. You can't go by one metric. So it's important that you have structure in your training, so you know when to rest. So you come in with the different muscle groups being rested enough so they can drive each other. Meaning, with dead legs, there's nothing the heart can do, because if your legs can't get going, you might as well be sitting on the couch resting that day instead of going hard. And what I want to get to is the fact that the reason this is significant is if you just rode all the time, not understanding that you needed to rest the different muscle groups, you show up at your big events with tired legs, as opposed to coming there being fresh, ready to perform. That's why it's important. You can't just ride around if you want to do well in your big events, if you want to consistently improve, because just riding around has too much hit and miss. I am not saying that you can't train without a power meter or a heart rate monitor, because I am a big believer in RPE. Because even if you're just riding around, if you're good at RPE, that can be enough. Those of you who've been on the channel long enough, you've heard me mention the joke my coach basically threw on me. I was racing and my cyclometer wasn't working. It just gave me speed back in the day. And so he said, if you're going fast enough, you'll be at the front. That's really what it equates to. So don't put a lot of stock. Don't get dependent on these gadgets. All you need is a bike and your legs, and you need structured training. You need to know that today I need to go this hard. And then tomorrow I need to back off so I can rest. And then tomorrow I need to go this. Because if you're not going hard enough for the adaptation of your body to occur, you're not going to get the benefit. And if you're not going slow enough so your body can recover, you won't be ready for your next event. So to that effect, keep getting those Ks in.